Smoke drifted through the ravaged valley, coiling around charred vehicle husks and mangled steel. The air shimmered with the crackle of burning debris and the distant purr of idle engines. Boots crunched over rubble as American soldiers moved with measured precision, collecting intel, shouting coordinates, their voices bouncing off soot-stained ruins. Lieutenant Jack Rowan, 31, oversaw the aftermath. Dust streaking his face, weariness clouding his eyes. He'd expected a simple weapons depot sweep, routine and uneventful, until he noticed her. Among the line of captured insurgents stood a single woman, wrists zip-tied, motionless and composed. She didn't beg or cry like the rest. Her gray eyes were fixed on the northwest ridge, cool, focused, analytical. Probably their comms girl, one private snickered. Another added, "Too clean to be from around here." Sergeant Cole Turner murmured under his breath, "Something's not right with her." She neither flinched nor blinked, her stare unwavering toward the hills where Rowan's artillery batteries now sat. A faint metallic glint caught his eye beneath her collar, a raven engraved beside a lone star. Before we continue, make sure you're subscribed to Major Tom's Tales so you never miss stories of courage and survival, and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from today. Lieutenant Rowan leaned against the folding table, studying the silent detainee seated before him. The tent vibrated faintly with the hum of generators outside, while distant machinery and clipped radio chatter bled through the canvas. She sat unnervingly still, hands bound, eyes tracking nothing, yet seeing everything. He'd interrogated dozens before, but none like her. "Name," he said evenly. No response. "You understand English?" Her face stayed unreadable, neither defiant nor fearful, just precise. Turner stood by the entrance, arms crossed. "Sir, she's stonewalling. Let intel take over." Rowan shook his head. "No, she's too controlled." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You know these hills, don't you?" Her eyes flicked once toward the terrain map on the table, then back to his. Corporal Ethan Vale entered next, youthful and alert, tablet in hand. His gaze fell to her boots. Scuffed regulation tan, but an old, discontinued issue, special ops only. "Sir," he said quietly, "those aren't local. Those are ours." Turner smirked. Maybe she stripped them off a corpse. But Vale frowned. "No, look at the laces. Patterns trained." She tied them right. Rowan's patience thinned. His palm hit the map hard. "If you've got something to say, say it." The woman didn't twitch. Her gaze drifted back to the northwest ridge, tracing the contours with unnerving familiarity. Then, with deliberate precision, she raised one bound hand and tapped twice beneath the ridge, exactly where his artillery sat. "What the hell does that mean?" Turner muttered, irritation masking unease. She gave no answer, lowering her hand to her lap, perfectly composed again. Vale whispered, "That's a warning, sir. She's trying to tell us something." Rowan rubbed a thumb along his jaw. He'd seen fear, rage, denial, but not this kind of quiet. This was discipline, calculation. Every glance, every pause, every blink seemed intentional. By sundown, everyone in camp had heard the rumors. The quiet woman had unsettled the lieutenant. The nickname stuck. While others joked, Vale kept watching her. When he passed her a bottle of water, she nodded slightly, accepted it with her left hand, military style, concealing her trigger hand. Turner muttered, "Sir, she's trained, or she's dangerous. Either way, she's not some villager." Later that night, Rowan caught her reflection in the mirrored plate of his Humvee. She wasn't watching guards or prisoners anymore. Her eyes were fixed on the ridge, where his artillery glowed faintly under the fading sun. He stepped back into the tent, the unease in his gut deepening, and studied her once more. "You're not who they think you are you?" Rowan asked quietly. Her eyes rose just enough to meet his, a flash of understanding passing between them, sharp, brief, and gone as fast as it came. That night, Corporal Ethan Vale stayed late at the comms table, scrolling through encrypted archives. When he typed Raven insignia, one old classified file appeared. A sniper emblem tied to an experimental strike unit known as Phantom 7. Every member was listed KIA 2 years earlier, wiped out in an ambush during Operation Frost Veil. The unit commander, Captain Lara Monroe. Vale's pulse quickened. He looked at the woman's tag resting half-buried in dust on the table, the same raven etched beside a single star, and froze. Her real name wasn't what she'd given them. It was Lara Monroe, early 30s, American, legendary sniper commander, vanished without a trace. Officially dead, unofficially, sitting in their camp alive. Outside, Lieutenant Jack Rowan flicked his cigarette into the dirt and stared toward her tent. Inside, she sat beneath a dim lantern glow, hands folded, her gaze distant but deliberate. He couldn't explain why, but deep down he knew this woman wasn't their enemy. She was something else entirely. The night settled heavy over the valley, thick with the scent of scorched steel and the distant roll of thunder. The base had gone still, save for the low hum of generators and the crunch of boots on gravel. Rowan stood outside the holding tent, arms folded, watching the flickering lantern light through the canvas. Inside, Monroe sat where she always did, motionless, eyes fixed on the ridgeline she'd marked earlier on the map. He'd kept her isolated from the rest, partly for security, mostly because something about her composure gnawed at him. It wasn't fear, it wasn't defiance, it was calculation. She was studying every patrol, every sound, every shadow, and Rowan couldn't shake the feeling that she knew something no one else did. Sergeant Cole Turner approached, rubbing his hands against the cold. "You still think she's worth the trouble? Intel says wrap it up and move her to division." Rowan didn't turn his head. "We'll move her when I figure out what she's looking at." Turner sighed. "She's playing you, sir. Classic diversion." Before Rowan could answer, the voice from the nearby radio shack cut in. "Sir, Recon Team Delta missed their check-in. Last ping was 30 minutes ago." Rowan straightened immediately. "Try their frequency again." Static, silence. He glanced back toward the tent. Through the slit in the canvas, he saw Monroe's silhouette lit by the lamp, still staring at those same hills, perfectly still. Then, Private Drew Nolan burst from the tent, pale and short of breath. "Sir, you'd better see this. She's doing something strange." Rowan and Turner hurried inside. The air was thick and warm, smelling of canvas and oil. Monroe sat cross-legged, lightly tapping the metal tent pole. Short bursts, long pauses, a rhythmic pattern. Turner frowned. "What is this, some kind of trick?" Nolan hesitated. "It's Morse, Sergeant. My dad taught me. She's repeating one word, Delta." The word hit Rowan like a current. Delta, the same recon team now silent. Turner folded his arms. "Convenient. She probably overheard the chatter. She's bluffing." Rowan knelt beside her, his voice low but firm. "Who told you about Delta?" The tapping stopped. For several seconds, only the hiss of the lantern filled the tent. Then she spoke, her tone calm, stripped of all fear. "If you send men up the North Road," she said evenly, "they'll be dead in 20 minutes." Every head turned. The voice carried a real American accent. No hesitation, no mimicry. Rowan's jaw tightened. How do you know that? Her eyes met his, steady as steel. Because that's exactly what I would do. Turner barked a short, uneasy laugh. Sir, she's manipulating you. Enemy intel, psychological ops. Quiet, Rowan cut him off sharply. Monroe leaned forward, dragging a pencil across the terrain map still pinned to the table. Her movements were methodical, confident. She marked 2 ridges, a dry riverbed, and one narrow road winding through the northern pass. Here, she said, tapping softly. 2 machine gun nests overlapping fields of fire. She shifted the pencil slightly south. This is your kill zone. They'll let the point team through first, wait for the support trucks, then collapse both sides. Rowan felt his stomach tighten. It was too exact, too perfect. Every ridge, every contour matched what he'd seen through his scope earlier that morning. Turner tried to mask his unease with a scoff. You expect us to believe you know their entire setup? Monroe's expression didn't change. No, she said quietly, eyes unblinking. I expect you to believe your men don't have much time. I expect you to believe your men don't have much time. The words hung in the air, slicing through the tent like a blade. Lieutenant Jack Rowan felt the atmosphere shift, the tension humming between heartbeats. Get me Delta now, he ordered sharply. The radio operator spun the dial, voice strained. Trying, sir, still static. Monroe spoke again, her tone steady, detached. You'll hear them soon. 2 words, then silence. Sergeant Cole Turner rolled his eyes. She's bluffing. Rowan opened his mouth to respond. Then the radio exploded with noise. Bursts of gunfire, a broken voice gasping, "Contact north," before static devoured the rest. The room froze. Turner's color drained as Rowan's grip on the table tightened until the wood creaked. Monroe exhaled quietly, as if confirming what she already knew. They've sprung the trap, she murmured. But it's not too late. She reached for the pencil, sketching fast, confident strokes across the map, an alternate route twisting through a dry riverbed that looped behind the ridge. Send your quick reaction force through here, she said firmly. They'll hit the flank, take out the machine guns from the rear, and pull your men south. If you go by the main road, they'll be gone before sunrise. Turner stepped forward. Sir, this is insane. We can't move on a prisoner's word. Protocol says 6 men are about to die if we don't act. Rowan snapped, cutting him off. The tent went silent but for the low hum of the lantern. Outside, thunder rumbled over the distant mountains. Rowan looked back at her, the silent woman who knew the terrain like it was carved into her bones. Her face remained composed, but a flicker in her eyes revealed something between resolve and exhaustion. He made his choice. We move the QRF through the riverbed, now. Turner tried to argue, but one look from Rowan shut him down. Within minutes, the camp came alive. Engines roared. Men shouted coordinates. Hatches slammed. Ammunition clicked into place. The radio operator monitored the feed, but Delta's channel stayed dead. Rowan stood at the vehicle bay, headset pressed tight as the convoy rolled out under red lights, tires grinding through the dust. In the tent, Monroe sat exactly as before, unshaken, calm. Corporal Ethan Vale lingered near the entrance, unease written across his face. "Ma'am," he said softly, not even sure why he called her that. "How did you know they'd be there?" She didn't answer immediately. Her eyes stayed on the darkness beyond the tent. Then, in a whisper that felt like memory, because I've seen it before. Minutes dragged into hours. The camp gathered around the radio, static hissing in endless waves. Every soldier within range listened, hoping for a signal. Then, through the interference, a faint voice broke through, ragged, breathless, but alive. Delta extracted. Repeat, Delta extracted. Enemy neutralized. Cheers erupted, boots stomping, relief flooding the air. Rowan lowered his head, the weight lifting from his shoulders for the first time all night. Turner stood wordless, eyes wide. Monroe hadn't moved. She simply closed her eyes for a moment and whispered, "That's one less name on the wall." Rowan turned toward her, finally understanding. She hadn't guessed. She hadn't improvised. She'd known. Every move, every warning, precise, deliberate, trained. And she had done it all, bound, silent, unarmed. He looked down at the map again, tracing the neat marks she'd drawn. It wasn't luck. It was experience. Somewhere deep in his gut, Rowan knew the truth. This woman wasn't a captive. She was a soldier. What would you have done in his place? Trusted the silent stranger or followed the manual? The rescue hit fast and hard, like the storm building on the horizon. Rowan stood in the command post, radio pressed to his ear, listening as chaos turned into coordination. Every clipped call, every move unfolded exactly as she'd outlined. Her plan had seemed reckless at first, using the dry riverbed, circling the ridge, flanking the ambush. But every minute proved her right. 10 minutes later, headlights broke through the dark. Delta's vehicles rolled into camp, battered, smoking, but intact. 6 men stumbled out, bloodied, uniforms torn, yet alive. Exactly as she'd said. The camp changed overnight. The laughter stopped. The jokes died. The prisoner who'd unnerved them had just saved a recon team with nothing but intuition and a calm stare. Even Turner, once her loudest skeptic, now stood outside her tent in quiet disbelief. "She called it to the minute," he muttered. How the hell did she know? Rowan didn't answer. He watched her silhouette through the canvas. Still seated, head bowed, wrists bound, she wasn't celebrating. She wasn't even looking at the rescued men. She simply breathed, steady and unshaken, as though the outcome had been inevitable. Word spread fast through the platoon. They started calling her the Ghost, some with reverence, others with unease. But no one mocked her anymore, and Corporal Vale, still haunted by curiosity, couldn't let go of the small metal tag he'd found beneath her collar, the one with the raven and the star. It had bothered him since the moment he saw it. He pulled the tag from the evidence tray, wiped the grime away with a cloth, and lifted it toward the lamplight. The engraving was faint but still legible. Raven 37, Phantom 7. Corporal Ethan Vale's pulse quickened. He opened his tablet, logging into the encrypted archives, fingers trembling. A single record appeared, redacted and sealed. Joint Task Force C, Special Sniper Unit, Operation Frostvale. The after-action summary was short and brutal. Unit destroyed an ambush. All personnel KIA. Commanding Officer, Captain Lara Monroe. Vale's breath caught. He turned toward the tent where she sat, half lit by the lantern, as calm as ever. "Sir," he whispered, "she's supposed to be dead." Lieutenant Jack Rowan looked up from his desk, disbelief flickering across his tired face. "Dead?" Vale nodded, sliding the tablet toward him. The black and white photo on the file was blurred by time, but the eyes, those gray, distant eyes, were unmistakable. Rowan stared at it for a long moment. Outside, thunder rolled again, low and endless. The realization sank in slow and heavy. The woman they had mocked, bound, interrogated, she wasn't a prisoner at all. She was a soldier, a sniper commander who had died on paper and somehow walked back into their world. The next morning came cold and gray, a light that made the desert look like ash. Rowan was still staring at Vale's tablet when the first sound reached camp. Low diesel engines. Steady, too disciplined for a wandering convoy. Every head turned toward the perimeter. Through the haze, a formation of matte black trucks rolled up the road. No markings, no flags, moving with eerie precision. "Who cleared this traffic?" Rowan barked. Silence. The radio confirmed. No scheduled arrivals, no friendly units in the area. The guards in the towers clicked their safeties off. The air thickened with unease. Turner muttered, "Sir, that's not supply, that's a hit team." Rowan raised his binoculars. The vehicles halted 30 yards out. Doors opened in perfect sequence, not in panic, but formation. Men in black fatigues stepped out, rifles slung but ready, movements exact. Special operations discipline. But whose? "Hold fire," Rowan ordered quietly. "Let's see who wants to die first." From the lead truck, a tall man emerged, silver threaded through his cropped hair. Posture like iron. His presence radiated command, the kind born from decades of giving orders and keeping secrets. Dust swirled around his boots as he approached. "Colonel Marcus Hale, Operations Command," he introduced himself, voice calm, deliberate. Turner's whisper barely carried. "He's Ghost Division. What the hell's he doing here?" Rowan stepped forward cautiously. "This is an active site, Colonel. You're not cleared." Hale didn't reply. His eyes swept the camp, faces, wreckage, weapon placements, until they stopped on the tent. On her. Captain Laura Monroe stood outside now, still zip-tied, dust streaking her hair. For the first time since capture, something flickered across her expression. Recognition. Hale froze mid-stride. The hardness in his face cracked. Without a word, he straightened to attention and saluted sharply. "Captain Monroe, ma'am." The camp fell silent, so still it seemed the wind itself held its breath. Every soldier who had laughed, doubted, or whispered about her now stared in stunned silence. Even Turner took a half-step back. Rowan's gaze moved from Hale to her, confusion burning behind his eyes. Hale lowered his salute, his jaw set. "Lieutenant, you've been holding one of the most decorated snipers this Army ever produced, Phantom 7's commanding officer, officially KIA, or so the paperwork said." The words rippled through the ranks like a shockwave. Someone muttered, "She's the ghost they talk about." Rowan turned toward her. She wasn't looking at anyone, just past them, toward the ridge where she had once fought and nearly died. The sun caught the edge of her tag as it swayed against her chest. Raven, 37. Hale stepped closer, voice softer now. "We thought you were gone, Lara. Every report said Frost Vale wiped you out." She met his gaze, calm but weighted with memory. "It almost did." Rowan stood frozen. Everything, the silence, the warnings, the map, clicked into place. She hadn't been studying terrain like an enemy. She'd been reliving it. Hale turned toward the stunned soldiers. "Untie her, now." Turner hesitated. "Sir, with respect." "That's an order." "Sergeant." The zip ties came off. Monroe flexed her wrists once, then looked at Rowan. "You moved your men when I told you to." He swallowed. "You saved them. All of them." She gave a faint nod. Nothing more. Hale motioned to his team, who began unloading sealed black cases stamped with top clearance tags. Whatever was happening, it ran far deeper than anyone in that camp could grasp. Rowan watched as Monroe walked beside Hale toward the command tent, the soldiers parting in silence like a tide. Every mocking word, every careless laugh vanished into the dust. For the first time since the war began, the valley was quiet. For the right reason. Respect, the command tent felt smaller than ever, its thin canvas walls straining beneath the weight of every word exchanged inside. Outside, wind rattled the poles, and thunder echoed through the valley like distant artillery. Inside, Colonel Marcus Hale stood over the map table, fingers spread, eyes fixed on Lieutenant Jack Rowan. Across from them, Captain Lara Monroe remained silent, her face calm, though exhaustion had etched faint shadows beneath her eyes. Hale spoke slowly, choosing each word with deliberate care. 2 years ago, Captain Monroe led Phantom 7 during Operation Frostveil. Mission parameters were straightforward. Exfiltrate a civilian defector carrying evidence of enemy bioweapon experiments. It should have been simple. His tone hardened. It wasn't. He tapped the same ridgeline Monroe had marked earlier that week. They walked into a slaughter. The enemy was waiting. Every exit sealed, comms dead, air support delayed. It wasn't bad intel, it was a setup. Rowan frowned. A setup by who? Hale's gaze darkened. Colonel Adrian Kessler, Joint Special Operations. He oversaw the mission. When the defector refused to turn over the research, Kessler ordered a cleanup. He couldn't risk proof of a U.S.-sanctioned bioweapon program surfacing, so he erased the entire team. Sergeant Cole Turner exhaled sharply, disbelief morphing into anger. He hit his own people. Hale nodded grimly. Artillery, airstrikes, mercs, everything. 16 men and women gone in under an hour, but one survived. His eyes shifted to Monroe. She disappeared before the final strike. Officially, she died in the blast. Unofficially, she's been tracking Kessler's network ever since. Rowan's throat tightened. And she came here. Hale nodded once. She didn't stumble into your camp, Lieutenant. She followed a signal. Kessler's assets are embedded across this region. Contractors, comtechs, compromised officers. His next strike was aimed at your artillery. Rowan froze. The Ridge. Monroe finally spoke, voice low but unwavering. He planned to wipe you out and make it look like insurgent retaliation. Same playbook, same lies. I couldn't let it happen again. The tent went silent. Every soldier who had doubted her now stared in stunned realization. She hadn't been a captive. She'd walked into the fire on purpose, to expose the same corruption that had buried her unit. Rowan sank into a chair, the truth hitting like a gut punch. You saved us to finish what they started. Monroe's gray eyes met his, sharp yet calm. No, Lieutenant. I saved you so no one else ends up on a wall of names that never should have existed. Outside, lightning forked across the mountains. The wind howled through the valley, a sound that could have been thunder or applause. Inside, the truth settled like dust. She wasn't their prisoner. She was the ghost who came back to hunt the men who thought she'd never return. At 0300 hours, the first mortar hit. The blast tore through the dark, turning night to white fire. Rowan was thrown from his cot, slammed into the dirt as shrapnel ripped through the command tent. The second shell hit seconds later, closer, too close. Sirens wailed, chaos exploded through the camp. Contact, incoming fire, South Ridge. Someone screamed over the radio. Soldiers stumbled from bunks, grabbing rifles, helmets, anything. Smoke and panic filled the air. And through the chaos, one voice cut through, clear, sharp, unmistakable. Get away from the motor pool. Monroe's tone was pure command. She moved with instinct, dragging a dazed private out from behind a fuel truck just as another round detonated nearby, the shockwave flattening a tent. Rowan scrambled to his feet, ears ringing, watching her move through the chaos. She wasn't ducking for cover. She was reading the impacts, counting seconds, calculating trajectories. 3 ranging shots, she muttered under her breath, narrowing her eyes toward the hills. Next volley walks east to west. She sprinted toward the comms post, shoving debris aside. "Get me Overwatch grid now," she barked. The operator hesitated, startled. "Now!" The radio crackled. "Overwatch, this is forward command, identify." Monroe leaned in, voice steady and cold. "Raven 3, Echo 7, fire mission on my mark." The room froze. Even the operator's hands hovered midair. That call sign wasn't supposed to exist anymore. After a beat, a voice replied, calm, reverent, immediate. "Copy that, Captain Monroe. Standing by for coordinates." Every soldier within earshot froze. They weren't hearing another officer. They were hearing legend. Monroe grabbed a grease pencil, marking the dirt-streaked map. Target grid, Sierra 5 through Sierra 8. Walking barrage north to south. Fire for effect. "Confirmed, Captain. Rounds outbound." Seconds later, the mountains erupted. Explosions rolled across the ridgeline in perfect sequence, shaking the earth beneath their boots. Monroe didn't flinch. Shift 50 left. Elevation down 2 clicks. Hold fire on the east flank. Redirect to west slope. Enemy vehicles moving. Her tone was razor-sharp, unshaken. Under her command, chaos turned into rhythm. Soldiers who had been scattered now moved as one. Rowan's men formed firing lines, pulling back to secondary trenches. "Cover your angles. Keep silhouettes low," Monroe ordered, moving between foxholes like she'd never left the battlefield. Even Turner, limping from the blast, fell into step beside her. "We've got hostiles breaching the perimeter," he shouted. "Negative," Monroe replied, raising her rifle. One clean shot cracked through the smoke. The advancing silhouette dropped instantly. Not anymore. The battle raged on, but with every command she gave, the tide shifted. Monroe wasn't fighting to survive. She was orchestrating survival. The defenders rallied to her voice. Chaos gave way to order, confusion to focus. Commands that had scattered moments before now flowed like clockwork. Lieutenant Jack Rowan's men pulled back into secondary trenches, forming firing lines under Captain Lara Monroe's crisp direction. "Cover your angles. Keep low," she barked, weaving through foxholes like she'd been there all along. Even Sergeant Cole Turner, still limping from the blast, fell into rhythm beside her. "We've got hostiles breaching the line," he shouted. "Negative?" Monroe snapped, raising her rifle. One precise shot cracked through the haze. The figure at the gap dropped instantly. Not anymore. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Mortars hammered the ridges. Machine guns stitched fiery arcs through the dark. Yet Monroe moved with unshakable precision. No panic, no hesitation. Just that same eerie calm that had unsettled them days ago, now the only thing holding the line together. By 0500, the last enemy wave broke. Vehicles burned across the outer ridge, silhouettes flickering orange against the pale dawn. The air stank of oil, gunpowder, and smoke. Silence slowly reclaimed the valley, broken only by the hiss of burning canvas and the distant rumble of fading artillery. Rowan stood beside what remained of the command tent, chest heaving. Across the camp, soldiers began to rise, scanning the horizon with trembling hands and soot-streaked faces. From the gray mist, Monroe emerged. Her uniform was torn, blackened with soot, but her posture never wavered. She stopped in the middle of the wreckage, surveying the ruins of the camp she had just saved. Colonel Marcus Hale stepped forward, his face etched with dust and disbelief. For a long moment, he simply looked at her, the soldier he'd once believed buried under the ice of Frost Vale. Then he stood at attention and saluted. Welcome back, Captain. Rowan followed, his throat tightening as he raised his hand in kind. One by one, every soldier did the same. Privates, sergeants, lieutenants, all saluting the woman they had once zip-tied, doubted, and mocked. No one spoke. No one needed to. Morning sunlight broke through the thinning smoke, and in that stillness, respect replaced every doubt that had ever haunted this valley. Monroe didn't bow or smile. She simply returned the salute, steady, deliberate, and silent. The same silence that had once unnerved them now carried the weight of command, memory, and survival. The ghost of Phantom 7 had returned, and the Army would never forget her. Weeks later, the war itself felt distant, like an echo fading into the horizon. The air at Fort Sentinel was still, the parade ground lined with rows of flags fluttering faintly in the wind. Soldiers stood in formation, solemn and silent, as a black cloth was lifted from a bronze plaque. 16 names were engraved upon it, the fallen of Phantom 7, the ones who never came home from Operation Frost Veil. Captain Lara Monroe stood at the front, her uniform pressed, hands clasped neatly behind her back. Sunlight glinted off her ribbons, but her eyes stayed fixed on the plaque, not the audience. Beneath the names, the inscription read simply, "For truth, for honor, for those forgotten." When the general stepped forward, holding a medal meant to honor her survival and the truth she had exposed, Monroe shook her head softly. "It belongs with them," she said, setting it against the bronze just below the final name. The gesture drew no applause, only reverent silence. When the crowd dispersed, Lieutenant Rowan lingered. He stepped beside her, hat in hand, searching for words. The woman who had once been his captive now stood before him as something far more than a soldier, living proof that conscience still mattered in a world that often forgot it. "You could have stayed silent," he said quietly. "No one would have known. You could have disappeared again." She studied the plaque, her voice soft but unwavering. "Silence only matters when it protects truth," she replied. "Not when it hides it." Rowan nodded slowly. "The Army's changed because of you." A faint, tired smile touched her lips. Then maybe the silence was worth breaking. She reached into her pocket and withdrew a small metal tag, the same one he'd glimpsed glinting beneath her collar that first day in the valley. The raven and star were worn smooth from years of wear. "Keep it," she said, placing it in his hand. "Remind them, the quiet ones have usually seen the most." Rowan looked down, feeling the weight of it, heavier than any medal he'd ever received. When he looked up, Monroe was already walking away, her figure fading between the rows of flags. The wind swept across the field, rustling the plaque and the tag she'd left behind. Respect, he thought, isn't written in medals or reports. It's carried by those who stand tall when no one's watching. She never asked for recognition, never sought fame. All she'd ever wanted was truth, and for every fallen name to be remembered the way it deserved. Long after the ceremony, her story became a whisper passed through barracks and training grounds. They called her the ghost of Phantom 7, the captain who returned not for vengeance but for justice. Some heroes leave footprints in history. She left silence, silence that spoke louder than any medal ever could. If you enjoyed this story, make sure you're subscribed to Major Tom's Tales, where the courage of those who serve is kept alive for generations to come.